Welcome to the National Veterans Show, where we present ideas, concepts, resources. We bring interesting people with interesting topics that affect and benefit our veteran community. Every third Friday of the month, we have a legal segment with Kelly Bagla. Kelly is the best business attorney you will ever meet. It's a wonderful experience to work with Kelly, and we're honored that she is part of our network and contributes her expertise with our community on different topics every month. So today I would like to welcome Kelly to our show. Hello,
Hello,
Kelly.
Joe. Hi, how are you?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. Thank you. As always, you look so good. Always, you
Thank
know.
you very much. It's always a pleasure to be on with you.
It's always a pleasure. And I was telling our audience, how our wonderful experience of working together and how much I admire your expertise and how successful you are. I mean, you were just nominated in one of the many trophies that you have.
Joe, I can say that we absolutely love what we do. We love helping entrepreneurs become successful. And Joe, as you very well know, I'm an entrepreneur myself 4 times over. So I know exactly what the entrepreneurs are going to go through from the beginning all the way through the growth period and how to really set up the business for success. So when you love what you do, it shines, right, in everything that we do. We have incredible clients. We love working with obviously our veterans. I'm married to a veteran. Our son
Right.
is in the Marines currently, and so yes, it truly is a blessing and a pleasure to be serving the veteran community.
Well, and we thank you, and on behalf of every veteran out there, our gratitude for what you do for all of us.
Thank
And
you.
because finding an attorney, finding someone with expertise, the talent, and also the charisma and the willingness to support what we do is hard to find. So I'm honored to have found you, and then and all the things that you do with the chamber and for the chamber. So I really appreciate it.
Thank you,
And
Joe.
so I know we have a disclaimer before we get started, so I would like to start with that.
Absolutely. So, any information that I share on the show today is only for informational purposes. It does not create an attorney client privilege.
Excellent. That being out of the way, today's today's topic is I guess we can call it crazy laws that are coming into effect or possibly coming into effect soon in California. And let's focus on California for now. But some of these laws affect other states. But so, what is one of those craziest laws that is about to come to play?
Well, let's talk a little bit about the real property, because real property is everyone's biggest asset. We work, 15, 20, 30 years just to pay the mortgage, and this is just on one property. And if we're lucky, we can actually put down a down payment by securing your primary investment, right, for a rental property. So you're working really hard to now secure a rental property. And what's going on in the nation right now, it's beyond heartbreaking. It is homeowners are losing their rights to their own property. So over the many years, at least 3 years now, where we've had a lot of new people come into our country, there have been cases, a lot of cases, and this is nationwide, where these people are just turning into squatters and they're squatting in these homes, these rental homes that are owned by Americans. And the law is, believe it or not, 30 days. If a person is living in a real property for 30 days uninterrupted, and they receive mail there, they have utilities there, then what is the action? What happens? Well, they end up having the right to stay there without paying any rent. So today's show really is for our real estate rental owners just to protect themselves, because this is happening everywhere. Now, what we do here at the firm is we really do an assessment for the real estate owners that own rental properties. And what we do is we will make sure that the rental properties themselves are protected through some sort of vehicle. Usually it would be an LLC, but then we also set up another management company to manage those rentals. The other thing that I wanted to bring to everyone's attention, Joe, is here specifically in California, in San Diego County. It used to be where parents could pass their property tax-free, assessment-free to their children, completely free. They could pass it down. They could pass multiple properties down. Now, as of January, I'm going to say 2021, and this law is now being implemented currently, is a parent can only pass down tax-free, assessment-free, a primary residence to a child. So for example, if a parent passes down a home and the child is going to use this as a primary residence, they're going to live there, they're going to use it as their primary residence, then that transfer of property, that will be tax-free and assessment-free. That's just transferring directly from parent to child. If the parent has multiple properties, rental properties, and now you want to transfer these rental properties over to your children, the children are going to end up paying assessment taxes on the current value. So for example,
Wow.
say the parents have bought 4 rental properties about 20 years ago, and everybody knows what the pricing was 20 years ago.
Right.
The pricing of houses. So back then, say you bought a nice condo for $150,000, right? Let's just say 250,000 because we're here in California. At this point, that same condo is going to cost someone the fair market value of that condo right now is probably going to be about $800,000 to $900,000 in California. So now when the parent passes that property over to the children are going to pay taxes on the $800,000 or $900,000 value, not at the basis that the parents had bought the property. So
Ouch.
my advice to the parents out there that own rental properties, one, please make sure that they are actually protected from potential lawsuits. And we do that very, very well here with all of our clients that own rental properties. Two, if you can avoid the transfer of rental properties to your children while you are still alive, then I would highly recommend that those rental properties actually be part of your living trust. Have a living trust set up, because when property passes from a trust to a child, that is all tax-free and assessment-free. Obviously, if the estate of the person passing away is going to be less than $11 million. So now the parents can have 5, 6, 7 rental properties that they pass on to the children, again, tax-free, assessment-free. If they actually want the children to become participants in the rentals and become participants in the rental business, then we can obviously add the children onto an LLC or the management company that manages these properties. So there are ways that we can not bypass, but we can become very smarter and cleverer than what the state is requiring right now. So there are options that we can explore with parents that own real property, rentals in particular.
Yeah, that's very interesting because in one of the segments, prior segments last year, we were talking about the difference between a will and a trust, and you were the one that kind of gave us the kind of the information, because everyone before was creating wills, and like they have a will, blah blah blah, but that did not protect families from probate. And it's like, what? So like, so the suggestion was to create the trust. And so the trust, and correct me if I'm wrong, so the trust is set up separately, and it can be set up as a kind of like an umbrella entity, and then each of the properties can be set up with its own LLC, right? So if I have let's say I have 5 properties, and I have children that I want to give this to, instead of giving the property, I can either add them, or how would that work? I can either add them to the umbrella trust, or I can do that and also add them as a LLC participants on each of the properties without having to go through the issues with the government, correct?
Correct. Yes, absolutely, Joe. So I would recommend not to put the real property into the trust. So the real property, the title on your deed shouldn't be the title of the trust. It should be the title of an LLC. So we have
Mm.
5 rental properties in California. They're all worth more than $500,000. We recommend that we put them in separate LLCs. So now you can actually add a child to the LLC as an LLC member. And at that
Okay.
point, if you want to retire and you don't want to manage these properties anymore, you remove yourself, but yet your child still has ownership of the LLCs and the properties themselves without the reassessment
Right.
that the state here in California requires. And then the LLCs themselves, the interest in the LLCs, that would be put into the living trust. So absolutely, the living trust is going to be the umbrella that holds everything, but it's how it's the property is being transferred into the living
Right.
trust. So yes.
So, and I'm guessing this is more of, kind of like the process and flow. So, what goes first, the chicken or the egg kind of situation, that someone wants to like do a self-service situation. It would be kind of dangerous because it would be like building a home and not putting the roof first before foundation, that kind of stuff. So, that's what I think. Having you as part of the process, because you know the flow, you know the process, where to put what, and what kind of documents are respected and recognized by the government as no touchy. Do not touch that kind of approach.
Exactly,
Okay.
completely joking. And because each client is so unique and each situation is very, very unique, it depends, not necessarily because the real property is located in California, doesn't necessarily mean that you have to have an LLC in California. What we're trying to do is keep California's hands off your property, right? You paid for it, it's
Right.
yours, you own it, so you should have the right to protect it. So sometimes it depends on whether it's going to be better for the client to form these entities in a business friendly state. But since we're in California, we have to manage the properties. Therefore, we're doing business in California because we're managing the properties. So now the management company can be formed in California. So you're still in compliant with California law. But it really does depend on each situation. But you are correct, Joe. I mean, it's not one of those situations where I would recommend anyone go out and start setting up the LLCs and putting their properties in there and then putting that same LLC in a trust. There are other documentations involved. There's always documentation involved,
Of course
especially
there
when
is.
you're talking about legal. Exactly.
Of course there is. Right. Because there is, I mean, it's just ways to set it up that is recognized, that is in alignment with the laws and all those things that the government sets up to do, and whatever this for the intention of protection or whatever, however they do it. I don't understand it, but whatever, however they do it, having someone who can actually create the documents and set up the documents in a proper way, so the homeowners or the parents they don't have, imagine having this struggle after you have all this, success, and then you give your legacy to your children, and all of a sudden here comes, a suit, and it just takes it all away.
Exactly.
So it is important, and because we work with homeowners, we work with under the Housing for Heroes, and we do have tenants. I mean, not tenants, landlords, people, who have properties that they rent, and is important that they have a conversation with you, whether it's either to create it or just to review it, because people are like, oh, I know everything. That's what I hear from them. I know everything. So, we know everything, sure, but review and revise your process by someone who does their business. That's what they understand. Just creating an LLC, that's not the whole story,
Exactly.
and a
And
lot of them
Joe,
think so.
exactly. And Joe, I have 3 degrees. I have my master's level in law, and I don't know everything. I rely on professionals just like you do as well. So I stay in my
Right.
lane. But the one thing,
Right.
there's just a couple of things I would really like to highlight for the people that are out there trying to do it by themselves. Just listen to me 1 second, do it yourself first, right? I love you guys, but you really need to understand what you're doing first and foremost. And please make sure if you are going to be setting the LLCs up, there's something that's called a charging order. So you want to make sure that these LLC documentation will have something that's called a charging order, meaning that if a member of an LLC owes money to a creditor can literally go to the LLC and say, okay, pay up because your member owes us money. A charging order stops that. So you can't
Mm.
just go to an LLC and say pay up. So you really have to be careful as to what you're doing. The other very important thing, Joe, is how does the money flow? How does the money flow? If the money isn't flowing correctly and you don't have the management agreement in place, then it's really just going to be a pass through, which means that your personal assets, including all of your other rentals, can be up for grabs if and when you get sued. So that's why it's extremely
Mm.
important to at least get a consult with an asset protection attorney. We do that day in, day out. Get a consult. Make sure that your biggest assets are actually protected and you have something to pass on to as your legacy or to your kids.
Okay, that's excellent advice because, like I said, being entrepreneurs, they want to do things on their own. Don't tell me what to do approach, which we all understand that. But when it comes time to legal and tax, you have to talk to a professional because you don't know what's behind door number three, and that always comes to really get you at the end of the day. So, well, thank you, Kelly. Thank you for your advice. Thank you for your time. Uh, every time we have a conversation, time just flies. So, but one last question. So, if, um, and this is an issue probably many places, but primarily here in California. So, if you're a landlord and you rent a property, the laws protect the tenant more than they protect the landlord. And for sometimes logical reasons, common sense reasons, because some people tend to be whatever the reasons maybe in the past. But also there is uh, um, people who want to take advantage of those opportunities that the law protection. So it's like keeping that balance. But and so what would you advise a landlord to have a more of a, you are the tenant, I'm the landlord, I do everything right, but you also do everything right. So if you don't pay rent, I'm able to basically um, release and or relieve you and move and take you out. And in California, especially, and this is something that I heard through the grapevine. I'm not really certain, but like in LA, it's very, very difficult to remove tenants from your properties. So how can the landlord protect themselves from something like that
I
without
think
and avoid the all the court procedures?
I think the simplest answer to that, Joe, is we need to just replace all of the politicians in California. Until that happens, what I can advise is, and you're absolutely right, the law is currently, right now, in California, is if you are a landlord, you cannot, and say the tenant stops paying, you cannot evict them. Let me say that again. You cannot evict the tenants, if they stop paying you, you have to go through this very lengthy process, and eventually, maybe 3 or 4 or 5 months later, you might get access to your property. You might. Now, there are a couple of exceptions. One exception is if the landlord wants to take the property back and convert it into a family home or have their family members stay there. California is smart, so you can't just say, okay, we're kicking you out and my sister's coming in to live there. That person, the family member, has to live in that property for 1 whole year. That's one exception, whole year. So now, as a landlord, you have just missed out on 1 year's of income when you're renting your property, right? So thank you, California. The other exception is if you're going to demo everything, you're going to build again. So now you can kick out the tenants. But other than those two exceptions, it's a lengthy process, Joe. Who wants to go through that? Who's got money for that? Can the landlord sit back and say, okay, I can afford not to be paid for 5, 6, 7 months while this is going through the court system? It's getting beyond ridiculous. The real estate laws that were in position for homeowners, for owners that own that real property, those laws are not being applied for our benefit. It's being applied for the tenant. And it makes no sense here whatsoever, Joe. Like I said, it's the landlords, it's their responsibility, especially now, to make sure that their real property is protected. It's just going to get worse from here. So it's in their best interest to pick up the phone, give us a call. Happy to do a consult, happy to make sure your assets are protected going forward. But there are only a couple of exceptions that will allow for a landlord to kick out the tenant. Other than that, it's sad affairs, Joe. Real sad.
It is very sad. It is very sad. And I'm looking for ways around it because we work with a lot of, good-hearted people that want to support others, and but we also have to be responsive to protect them as the people who are having the properties, and be able to, you know, still make the mortgage, because while the landlord is going through court system and trying to do this, the bank is not saying, okay, we're waiting too. they
Exactly.
they want to repossess also. So like it's a domino effect. So I do have a question for you, and I'll reserve this for next time. So, but I'll ask you at the end of this show, because that's kind of interesting. I would like to get your input on that, and then bring it maybe next segment. But I want to ask you offline. It's a pretty interesting concept. So, but for now, Kelly, thank you very much for your time. We are always out of time, but your information is extremely valuable, and I really, really appreciate it. So thank you, and I will see you next month in our next radio show.
Wonderful. Thank you again, Joe. Such a pleasure.
Thank you. I also wanted to kind of say before we leave the show, I wanted to say hi to Dali, who is our regular host, and I'm just winging it. She's the one that does the show for us, and so I want to say hi to her, and I want to say hi to Shelly, who does our other show, and to Tammy, who is behind the scenes making all these things work. So again, thank you, and okay, Tammy, take us away.